Welcome to Small Business 21st Century. I'm your host, Don Moragne, for this session of the Wealth Zone University. How are you? As always, thank you for coming back and hanging with us and being a WZUer. Today, we're going to answer a couple of questions that I've gotten as I've had speaking engagements around the country. And the first one is, someone asked me when WZU, the Wealth Zone University, makes its sessions, they're always talking to CEOs. And I'm not a CEO, I'm a sole proprietor. Is any of that information pertinent to me? And I thought that if one person has that question, then a lot of people have that question. So let's delve into that, okay? The reason that we talk about being a CEO, thinking like a CEO, and we address all of our WZUers in the audience as CEOs is because it's where you want to be that we're trying to get you prepared for. We're definitely helping you where you are, but it's where you want to go that we're trying to get you to begin to think about. And the most important thing is that if you adapt the mindset of a CEO early and keep that mindset as your company grows, it's almost assured that you're going to realize success at the company at the level that you want to be in. So let's take a second. Let's look at this graphic of the CEO 5%er that we call it. The graphic will show you that's, well, let's call it the productivity of society, because we got this graph a while ago from the World Bank. And basically it breaks down into quadrants how the people of society are responsible and productive. And you'll notice that at the top, the 5% are the leaders, are the business people, and that's where we believe that the CEOs are coming from and are existing. And we believe that you are in that 5% or can be, even if you don't think you are now. So let's talk. You're a sole proprietor, just you in your business. You're a solo entrepreneur, which is a single individual who's probably incorporated or has some kind of legal entity around them. C corporation, maybe the elected S corporation, or your single member LLC, which is a legal entity, but still IRS considers you to be a sole proprietor. We're still talking to you because we want you to adapt the mindset of the CEO, even at the level that you are now, even if you're just beginning. Because remember, it's really important to make sure that where you're going, you're planning for now, and you can't plan for it unless you're able to think. So it's the mindset that we're trying to adapt for each and every one of our WZUers, and that's why we address all of you as CEOs, even if you don't intend to be anything more than a sole proprietor for your entire business venture, okay? So we're talking to everyone who's in business, whether you call yourself a business owner, whether you call yourself a sole proprietor, whether you call yourself a principal, whatever you need, we are talking to you. The information that we're sharing with you on the WZU is to make you aware that if you start at the beginning, implementing the proven business practices that we're sharing, and you follow and you become actionable, that you can become successful, okay? So yeah, the answer to that question is, we're talking to you. You, in our minds, are a CEO or a potential CEO. So let's think about that for a second. I'm a sole proprietor. I have no intention of hiring employees. I have no intention of being a big company. So why is all this pertinent to me? Well, you probably heard that you have to fail before you succeed. And if you've watched enough Wealth Zone University sessions, you know that we don't believe that. We compare that to going into the intersection and crashing before you know that you have to stop at the stop sign. It's not necessary. You know the laws, you know why the stop sign is there, you stop. You don't have to have an accident before you have to understand what the rules of the road. And it's the same thing in business. Failure is not a prerequisite for success. Now, understand, failure is part of life, and business is life also. And you may fail, but you don't have to fail. And one thing I want to get across to you, that if you do fail, don't spend too much time lamenting about it. get actionable, figure out why it happened, correct it, put a plan in place to move forward. Failure is a part of life, but failure is not a prerequisite for being successful in business, okay? So let me share this with you. I've been in business almost 35 years. My first year in business, I was a solo entrepreneur. I was by myself, but my business was incorporated. I put ink at the end because it looked impressive, okay? In my second year in business, I had a staff of about 11 people in a big office, and I thought that I was doing things correctly. My third year in business, the recession hit. Now, before that, I had a job with direct deposits, so I didn't even know what a recession was. But when I was on the economy and the recession came in, it was something that I had not planned for, had not expected, and never anticipated the impact it would have on my business. There's a saying about recessions that I want to share with you. It says the U.S. economists have accurately predicted 7 of the last 5 recessions, which just tells you that nobody knows what the heck is going on. But once you've been through a recession, you know that the economy is cyclical and it's coming back. So you need to prepare for the next 5, 3, 7 years because you know the recession is coming back. That's an example of failing, which I did. My 11 employees were totally out, didn't have jobs. But the time that I spent worrying about why the recession and I wasn't prepared for it was time that I could have spent making sure that it didn't happen again. And that's exactly what I did. I went and learned about recessions, why they happened, and I realized at that moment that it's not the profit and loss that are so important to a going concern. It's cash flow, positive cash flow. If you don't have any money in the bank, you don't have positive cash flow, which is why we adapted the practice of telling all of our clients, don't spend all of the money that goes into your business bank account every month. Take 10%, 5%, whatever you can, and start moving it over into a reserve account so you can start capitalizing yourself so that 1, you have capital that's set aside for emergencies like a recession. 2, you begin to capitalize yourself. And 3, you already know that it takes cash to build the long-term wealth that we always talk about. And so, yeah, does that apply to large companies? Sure. Does it apply to small companies? Sure. Does it apply to middle companies? Sure. Does it apply to the solopreneur and the sole proprietor? Absolutely. You see what I'm saying? These might be concepts that you think are beyond you, but they're not. And so I want you to join with the Wealth Zone University as we talk about things that are pertinent to you where you are, because we are trying to get you to go to the next level, wherever that is, and wherever you want it to be. You don't necessarily have to want a big company. I'll give you an example. We have a client who's been with us for a long time. They are wealthy now, but when we first walked in, they were a government contractor, and they were basically a small S corporation with 2 owners, 50-50, okay? We convinced them that if they made the wife a 51% member, they could get a special certification, and that would increase their business. Now, the husband had a problem with that, his ego. His wife making more than her. He made, she being the CEO and owning 51% of the company, he had a real problem with that. But within 2 years, they had tripled their revenue. Within 5 years, they had almost quadrupled their revenue. And I'm very serious. And what we did was the husband was still dissatisfied because his wife was a CEO and she made more money than he did. We spun off another company for the husband where he owned 100% of it, and he became a subcontractor to his wife's company, and before you know it, he was making almost as much money as she was. And so the outside benefit is that there were one household, and they were making twice as much money as one household as they could. 2, his ego was satiated because we gave him what he needed. But 3, we had to convince them to see something that they couldn't see at the level that they were. And that's why we say vantage point dictates your perspective. Vantage point dictates your perspective. We had to take both of them and give them a new vantage point on where they were so that their perspective on where they could go was absolutely different. And in that vein, let me tell you, there are 6 books. I'm not going to name them now. You can send me an email. But there are 6 books that I've read over and over again in my 30 years. Most of that reading was 3 to 4 years in between each reading. And why was that? Because the first time I read that book, it was interesting. There was information that I learned, but I didn't have the experience and exposure to really understand and implement everything that was talked about in those books. But I remembered that it was important. And so as I got more experience in my belt, I went back to these books. The same information that I read 4 years ago was totally different and more important than it was when I first read it. And I was able to implement and actualize that information each and every time I reread the book. And what I did was I took the information and I applied it to my company first to make sure that 1, I understood it, 2, that it worked, 3, that it was a solution that I could bring to my clients. And once I did that, I had a whole new venture and whole new set of solutions that I could offer to and bring to my clients. It's extremely important that we continue to realize that as business owners, small business, medium-sized business, large business, sole proprietors, solo entrepreneur, single member LLC, whatever we want to call ourselves, it's still our responsibility to realize that our business is part of the economy. The economy everywhere affects our business, whether we think about it or not, because that recession of 1991 was called the Gulf War recession. That was way, way far away from where I was in Maryland, but it impacted my business in Maryland. The reason we call you CEOs is because you are. The only person that we have to convince that you're a CEO is you, and changing your mindset can change everything about your business and how you do it now and where you're going, okay? So CEOs, stick with us. We're gonna take a break. We'll be right back with some more WZU information that is geared to each and every CEO and potential CEO who's hanging out with us today and every day, all right? See you in a couple of minutes. Bye. The objective of the Wealth Zone University is to change your mind about money, to change your financial future. Hi, I'm your host, Don Moragne. In the Wealth Zone University sessions, my guests and I talk about a wide variety of business, financial, and other worldly topics. We are seeking to both educate and entertain you. We emphasize that the information and discussions are my opinion, perspectives, and ideas, and those of our guests. We in no way intend to deliver or provide financial, tax, or business advice. You should consult with your tax, accounting, financial, insurance, and legal advisors regarding the impact, application, or pertinence of any topic or opinion that we share on the Wealth Zone University. Welcome back. To the second segment, we're going to talk about a couple of things that you probably heard before, and you've definitely heard before if you visited our other Wealth Zone University sessions. And this is a definition that I want us to understand. It's a size definition. We talked about it when we talked about exit planning. And I thought it was so important that I wanted to bring it back and make sure that we understood where we were. Because the size definitions, everybody's got a different one. Small Business Association has one. Every entity that you look at has one. But this is one from the International Business Brokers Association, which I think is important, and I'd like you to start thinking about using when you talk about your business. So excuse me for reading, but I'm going to read the definitions again. Main Street, businesses valued at less than $2 million, which is probably the vast majority of all of us. Lower middle is the next classification. Businesses valued at $2 million and less than $25 million. Again, where we want to go. We want to move from Main Street to lower middle market. The next category above that is middle market, which is businesses valued at 25 million and 50 million, which is most of the government contracting companies that we worked with. And then the last category for this definition is upper middle market, which are businesses valued at over 50 million, which is where I think we all want to be, or at least most of us want to be. So right now, most of us are in Main Street, $2 million or less in terms of value. Now notice that the International Business Brokers Association talks about value net revenue, but let's, you and I, consider value as revenue for right now, because value has a bigger concept. We've talked about it before, but I want for us right now to consider revenue. And so our job here at the Wealth Zone University is to talk to everyone in Main Street and get them to move to lower middle market, okay? Main Street, $2 million or less in revenue. Middle market, between $2 million and $25 million. We are calling you CEO because the reason that you have to think like a CEO is so that you can do well and do all the planning that you need while you are Main Street business, so that enhances and increases your ability to move to the next level, which is lower middle market, so that when you get there, you're also prepared to take the next leap to the middle market. You understand? It's a continuum. It's not where I am now, it's where you want to be and the steps that you have to take, the processes that you have to implement, the actions that you have to execute in order to be successful where you are now, CEO, Main Street, and plan and strategize as a CEO does to move to the next level, which is lower middle market. I mentioned to you in the prior segment that as CEOs, we don't work in the Main Street category. We work in the middle market category, which is, again, businesses between 25 and 50 million, and the upper middle market. That's where our expertise is. We take lower middle market companies and we guide them and advise them so that they move up to the next level. This show is speaking specifically to Main Street and lower middle because we want you to know that moving to the next level is something that each one of us can do. We just have to understand how to do it and how to get it right. Use myself as an example. I told you, my first year, I was a solo entrepreneur by myself. It was a strange time for me because I came out of the government as an executive, knew everything about the government and management, but didn't know very much about being in business because the conferences and the SBA and everything else that I went to, that was all theory. Now it was taking that theory and putting it into practice. And believe me, sometimes theory doesn't translate easily into practice. But by my second year, I had managed to hire employees, have lots of clients. It was working for me, and I thought I was in business. And I'll share something with you. When I came out and started my business, it became apparent that I had to go to other businesses and ask them to trust me and hire me. I read a bunch of books about cold calling, and I realized that I could do it, but I hated cold calling because I was asking someone to trust me to help them. It just didn't make sense to me. Then I discovered this word, rainmaker, which is an individual who uses relationships to bring money, revenue, connections, everything to a business. And that one change in word from cold calling to rainmaker made an entirely different thought process in my mind, because now as a rainmaker, I wasn't asking people to let my company help them. I was establishing relationships where they saw the value in my company helping them. And before you know it, instead of my going out and asking companies to help, companies were coming to us. Now, that was only because the change in my mindset, but that change in mindset came from me reading and expanding my knowledge so that I could have a different perspective, which we talked about before. And that perspective came from my having a different vantage point, which was experience and the fact that now I had a terminology that was more conducive to who I thought I was. Okay? So it's important for us to realize that learning never stops. We have to know what we know and make sure that we know it well, but we also have to know what we don't know and then be able to supplement that. That's why we continually ask you to become a student of being in business. Business is part of life, and life is just ups and downs. We talked about the business life cycle, we talked about failure, we talked about success, but as part of life, you have to continually learn it, and just like you do in elementary school, high school, and college, you have to progressively learn and actualize everything that has to do with business, okay? And so it's really important that, and I've got to emphasize this again, when we talk to CEOs, that we're talking to you. We're talking to everyone who's watching WZU. And if I've overemphasized that point, it's on purpose, because I want everyone to know that this is your show. This is about you. The topics that we bring are all geared to making you know where you are now and how implementing and understanding those topics can lead to your eventual success. And if you never want to be a CEO, if you never intend to grow, that's fine too. That's your vision. But having the information to make your vision more successful and more fruitful is absolutely what we're trying to do, okay? If you decide that you want to become a CEO, hey, we're giving you that information too. But we are absolutely talking to you, okay? So here's something else I want to make sure that you understand. It's important to know, as a business owner, what things you need to be paying attention to. We talked about the recession. That's the economy. You have to absolutely be aware of the global economy, because as I said, the recession of '91 was the Gulf War recession, very far away from us, but it impacted my company, and because of that, it impacted my employees. And so can you see the trickle-down effect? Yeah, there was a recession. Unemployment was off the roof. In fact, the recession lasted for 8 months, but the unemployment that resulted from the recession lasted for 20 months, almost 2 years. Can you see that? The recession lasted a year, but the impacts, the unemployment impact of the recession lasted 2 years, okay? And my 11 employees were part of that negative impact. It was imperative that I learn about the global economy so that next time I would be prepared. And now you and I should be making sure that we know what's going on around the entire world as far as economic events, and anticipating whether those economic events can possibly happen. And all of us just lived through the pandemic, so I don't even have to tell you exactly, that it impacts us. We know that for sure, all right? So it's imperative that we understand, as potential CEOs, what we have to think about. Global economics. 2, we have to understand cash flow. I don't care how good your financial statements look. If you don't have money in the bank, then you have a serious deterrent to your going concern. And I'm very serious about that. If you don't have money in the bank, you have a serious deterrent to your going concern. Because after you pay all of your expenses for being in business, you have to have a cash reserve that is there for things you didn't anticipate, for new markets that you want to get into. You can't do any of that unless you have a cash reserve. And so everyone says, well, I'll get a loan. First of all, you have to pay the loan back. So it's not free money, okay? It costs you money to get that money. That's number one. But number 2, most of us aren't in a position to have a bank or non-traditional entity fund us yet, because it takes a while. Remember, they're in business too. They want to be sure that we're going to be paying it back. And so that brings me to one more thing. We cannot be operating at a loss. I've heard people say, I operate at a loss, so I don't have to pay any income taxes. Uncle Sam does not care whether or not you're paying income taxes. You should. Income taxes are a toll along the road to success. If you don't have a net profit and you don't pay any income tax, you might feel like you accomplished anything, but when you go to the bank, all they're going to see is that you don't have any money, you don't have any money left over, you can't pay them, and they won't give you any capital. And then all you're going to say is, the bank won't give me any money. So remember that, okay? The last thing I want to cover is a question that I get a lot, and it's about this pin on my lapel. If you look at the graphic for the Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, you'll see that this is something that I'm extremely proud of because it was given to me by President Obama in 2016 for my contributions to the business and the nonprofit community. And one thing, got a story. The reason he gave it to me is, he said, Don, what do I have to do to stop you from hitting on Michelle every time you come down here? That's what I told him I needed, okay? Now, that part is secret. Don't tell anybody, okay? I can trust you not to let that little secret out for me? All right. Let's get together. You're a CEO. Know that you're a CEO. Know that we're talking to you. And know that the Wealth Zone University is your show. And everything that we talk about is you, okay? We've got free ebooks on this subject. So if you want, let us know. We'll get them right to you. Meanwhile, take care and let's go, CEO.